Of course, every story is important, but it's not just about any single story. It's the story of the world.
Not all universes begin with a bang. Some of the greatest things and the grandest adventures start out small. Welcome to Soul Atlas, a whole new fantasy experience where the world is the star and the stories are endless. This is not about a film, a game, a comic. It's about all these things and more. The creators of Soul Atlas are building a world where story can take any shape, any form, and they all connect together. This is the first installment in a long series of visual books to offer a window into how the world works, what lies at its core, and what goes into creating such a universe. This is a documentary not only about how something was made, but also why it was made. It is the story behind the storytellers.
The main distinguishing factor of Soul Atlas is the fact that our souls are something tangible. But when somebody dies, a soul comes out of their body. It is something that is real. It is something that is integrated into the fabric of this reality. It is something that is culturally included, architecturally, geopolitically, etc., etc. It has huge implications for the way people live their lives.
The Soul Atlas started out humbly with a small band of like-minded thinkers, artists and creators who were all besotted by fantasy and science fiction and who came together to try to build something new and meaningful. Now, at the heart of the birth and evolution of Soul Atlas, there is a round table of central figures. We will meet 4 of them today.
One of the things that I always wanted to do was fantasy. I grew up with Lord of the Rings and with Star Wars, so the toss-up was really between a space opera and a epic fantasy universe, and I ended up going for the medieval epic fantasy.
For me, it harkens back to the young Tiago that was completely besotted with all these fantasy and sci-fi worlds, specifically Star Wars. I was completely immersed in it. Lord of the Rings, the classics, of course.
Actually, Jonas invited me to join the project 3 years ago. We worked with each other before. In his previous projects, he invited me to do costume design. Then when he asked me if I wanted to join, I found the project really interesting. I was intrigued by the idea to build a fantasy world from scratch.
And the small band continued to grow what was becoming a creative collective. And of course, music and musicians were essential to the vision.
Yeah, I just stumbled in the project because I was the composer of the regisseur and now the head of Soul Atlas, Jonas. Then we just grew, and I was okay, I know these composers, we can put them in. The first one was Silas from Freiburg, and he was a friend of mine, and then we just thought, yeah, let's do it.
These are a number of OGs that stand at the very center of the Soul Atlas universe, but the community has now grown to over 150, all working together to fashion an ever-expanding and interconnected world of story and civilization. But Soul Atlas didn't begin its life quite like that.
Originally, we wanted to make a TV show. This was about a man and his daughter traveling to a particular place on the Atlas, and on the way there they met a character who gave them a particular item for them to transport to that objective. Whilst transporting this book, they encountered some inquisitors in the spirited forest where they would eventually start to fight with them, and the daughter would die, and the man would be able to carry the book to the city. Of course, he was a changed man, and then over the rest of the season he would get to know the character of the princess of the dynasty, who was roughly the age of his daughter, a bit younger, and we kind of see him overcome the grief and become a father figure again.
However, a TV show would have meant exposure at the cost of ownership, as any backer would have wanted to own the concept for Soul Atlas, and the team wasn't willing to give up its brainchild for short-term gain. This decision let loose the reins on Soul Atlas, where a central idea was taking shape. What if a world and its inhabitants were part of the same natural order and the stories of all would be told? The Soul Atlas is supported by 3 core pillars which hold up the universe and make the world possible. The first is the building of the world and how the soul and the Atlas connect to one another.
What resonated the most was the soul and the Atlas part and their combination with me, which means the soul because it forces the IP into meaningful storytelling. It's something that you don't take very lightly. It's something that we don't want to take as, just another action adventure. There's something more to it, and that's implied in the title. And then the Atlas sound is a bit more old sounding, a designation of place. Together they form the place of souls, essentially, and a place of meaning, and eventually that struck us as something that we wanted to go with.
Our world building is damn comprehensive, and we always consider second, third order effects. Whenever we include anything new into the world, we think of how could this work? Would this work? What are the implications? So take, for example, the dragons we included into our world. We didn't simply take the typical flying lizards that breathe fire and chuck them into our world. We thought, how would this actually function in a way that works from biology perspective, from the engineering perspective, and from the cultural perspective? What are the implications? From the environmental perspective, what are the ramifications? And so we work through all of these concepts and ramifications for every single thing we add into the world.
I try to draw from, obviously, because that I think is closest to me, European history and fashion, but also of indigenous cultures like the Inuit or the Native Americans, historical fashion from the different cultures in Asia, in Africa, but there's also reference and inspiration as well, architecture, art, different art styles, sculptures, paintings, drawings.
A special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing, to quote Mr. George.
Story to me is the thing that is the lifeline of everything that is organized under it. So story is the kind of, excuse the pun, nourishment for the soul that I think people use to get emotional intelligence and to relate.
I really want to breathe life into the people. Let them tell their stories and just help with the costumes and the fashion I create. I think that's for me personally the goal, to give them life, to give them soul, to give them character, to give them spirit, and see what stories can emerge from that.
We're in simultaneous developing different media types. So we have songs, we have audio play type things, audiobook, short stories, animatic, short form film, trailer, TTRPG, card game. As this is all happening, the thing that ties all of these projects together is, of course, the world. So world building is constantly going on for these different projects.
I think there's lots of opportunities that are missed, especially in movies, where we could really be inside the point of view at the character, not literally with the camera, but really help us understand how they must be feeling. That we know how the wet rain feels on a cold day, and when the steam is coming from people's mouths, and how that is.
So did you hear about the explorer who came back from their voyage saying everything went smooth as you like with no trials, no tribulations whatsoever? Me neither. Big things don't get done or made without big problems and big challenges.
Oh, there's been a lot of challenges. One challenge always is to my personal time. As I mentioned, I'm still a student. Sometimes it's like I'm working 2 full-time jobs. Definitely been a very personal challenge to manage my time. Another challenge definitely has been the world building, because that's not something I've ever done before. And I don't think that's really something you can learn before you do it. But I think slowly I'm getting the grip of it.
In the first year, we thought we could just put it out. It didn't really work. So in the second year, we started spinning up productions, therefore built a more solid team around the world building so that could happen in parallel, and that the two parts, the production, the world building, could constantly enhance each other. And then in the third year, we began doing marketing. And marketing, wow, we failed in so many ways, so many times. It's really it still is super challenging. We're still trying.
No matter how hard I try, I can't figure out how to clone myself and get more of me to help me out. It's too little time in a day. One of the biggest challenges is time, finding enough in our days to dedicate enough to create a project as great as we want to make it.
But it was actually also sometime hard for me when I was a bit struggling to keep everybody motivated, doing their things, being right on time on the meetings every day. I'm really thankful to the people that are accompanying us on that way.
And of course, the in-world difficulties of making Soul Atlas come with the real-world challenges of such an undertaking.
I have tried things in the past that were unconventional, and there's often a reason why they're unconventional. Either it's just extremely difficult, or it just doesn't really work the way that you intended it. It would be much easier to sleep at night if you know that you were the only one who is facing the uncertainty, because then if something happens to you, it's like, oh shit, I messed up. But if you have a lot of people who are with you, who rely on you to make good decisions, it does occasionally keep you up at night.
Now, a world without music would be a pretty sad and boring place. I think you'll agree. Music is something that really brings Soul Atlas to life, and our biggest project in the realm of music is called Anomaly. It took our composers and musicians a good 2 years to prepare for the recording. Would you like to know how we pulled off bringing together over 100 musicians together for a 13-hour concert? Join us on this journey in our next episode.